Well, good evening. Hurricane Idalia is currently about 190 miles southwest of Tampa and almost 300 miles south of Tallahassee with winds of over 100 miles per hour. It is intensifying. It's currently a Category 2 hurricane. It's almost certainly going to make landfall in the state of Florida as a major hurricane. The latest update by the National Hurricane Center made, and we had mentioned this in terms of what the models were showing. They put it at a westward shift, so the impact is going to be further north, and it is going to bring more direct impacts into counties like Leon, Jefferson, and Wakulla County if it continues on that. Now, these things can move over the next 24 hours, but it seems like most of these models are in agreement about the general area. So it's definitely going to hit the Big Bend. Everywhere in the Big Bend is going to get storm surge, is going to see major impact, whether the eye wall's hitting you or not. So please prepare for that. It is going to be a significant impact to that region of Florida. Now, if you are in an evacuation zone and you've been directed to evacuate, particularly if you're in a low-lying area or coastal area in that Big Bend region, now's the time to do it. You still have a little bit more time. If you wait much longer, by the time we get in further into tonight, the weather's going to start getting nastier and nastier, and we're looking at an impact of the eye wall arriving sometime tomorrow morning. So you really got to go now. Now's the time. If you don't, if you stay hunkered down tonight, it's going to be too nasty tomorrow morning to be able to do it. Now, if you do choose to stay in one of the evacuation zones, first responders will not be able to get you until after the storm has passed. That's right, they're not going to be able to get there till after the storm has passed. So please make decisions that are best for you and for your family. And remember, you don't need to travel hundreds of miles away. You don't need to outrun the storm. Simply getting to higher ground in a shelter, with friend's house, hotels, any of that will work. A lot of times you can do that within your own county, but you certainly are thinking more about traveling tens of miles rather than needing to do hundreds of miles. The National Hurricane Center advisory includes that if this storm hits at high tide, storm surge could reach 10 to 15 feet in some areas of the Big Bend. That is life-threatening storm surge. That is storm surge that if you're there while that hits, it's going to be very difficult to survive that. So please take appropriate precautions. We do have counties, a total of 28 counties have now issued some form of evacuation orders, including more recently Alachua, Hamilton, Leon, Nassau, Putnam, and Sumter. Know your zone on that. Typically, these are going to be zones A. Some will be zone A and B. And if you're in an area, certainly the coastal areas, barrier islands, and then if you're in areas that are low-lying or near some of the rivers, you likely would be advised to be evacuating at this time. We are already seeing impacts in Southwest Florida. We're seeing storm surge. I mean, the eye of this storm is probably 100 miles or more off the coast of Southwest Florida, and yet those outer bands are already showing significant impacts. So you're going to see impacts all up and down the west coast of Florida as the night goes on and as we get in to the wee hours of tomorrow morning. We have been working with folks for the evacuations, so the tolls have been suspended in Citrus, Hernando, Hillsborough, Lake, Pasco, Pinellas, and Sumter County. That started at 4 a.m. this morning. That will continue until this event is concluded. We've also worked with the Florida Restaurant and Lodging Association to make sure that all hotels will allow you to bring your pets. Don't leave your pets behind. You got to take them with you, and these hotels are going to be understanding of that. All the counties have at least one pet-friendly shelter as well. So please take care of your pets. Very, very important. They need you in this type of circumstance. Uber has also announced that they will be offering free round-trip rides to and from evacuation shelters with a value up to $35. You can use the code Idalia Relief to be able to claim that. So we want to thank Uber for stepping up and helping. We have all 8 urban search and rescue teams with almost 600 personnel ready to deploy to help with search and rescue efforts. Hopefully that's not necessary. Hopefully everyone heeded the warnings, and hopefully nobody ends up in harm's way when the storm hits. But we know that that's likely to be a necessity to have some rescues. So these folks are ready to go. They're located up and down the state, and they are going to go where they are needed, and we really appreciate having them. We also have additional search and rescue personnel that are going to be augmenting the USAR teams. We've been working with counties to make sure they have the resources they need to deploy. We've received 400 active missions that we are coordinating. We've either fulfilled or will have those fulfilled today and be ready to go when the storm hits tomorrow. We have 1.1 million gallons of fuel that's staged and ready to deploy. We don't know what the fuel situation is going to be like. Sometimes it can be bad, sometimes not as much. This will be able to fill gaps if those gaps exist. There are over 50 shelters throughout the state that are open, and every county that has any type of evacuation notice does then open at least one shelter for people to go to. Our Florida Highway Safety Motor Vehicle has 5 Florida licensing on wheel mobiles and 6 mini mobiles ready to deploy to impacted areas to help residents replace important documents such as driver's license. Hopefully that's not going to be necessary, but if you end up in that situation, we want to have folks that are going to be able to help you out with that. We've deployed almost 250 Starlink internet devices. We have another 500 plus staged and ready to go, and we'll likely be putting those into place soon after the storm passes by. Many school districts have announced school closures for today and for tomorrow, so please just check with your county. But if you're in the path of this storm, it's pretty good bet that the schools are not going to be open tomorrow. We also have 18 state colleges and 6 universities that are not having school tomorrow as well. As the winds become stronger today and into the night, Florida Department of Transportation will be coordinating with FHP and local law enforcement to close bridges once wind speeds reach 40 miles an hour or more. So just keep in mind with that, with any plans that you have, once the wind gets to a certain point, those bridges are not going to be safe to traverse, and Florida Highway Patrol will work with local officials to make sure that people are kept safe. We have been in contact with many states that have offered their assistance, and we're grateful for their efforts. We've already have National Guardsmen from both Tennessee and South Carolina. I want to thank them for stepping up and helping us out. We also have called up 33 ambulance strike teams with over 200 ambulances that are ready to surge in any of the impacted areas. So this is crunch time right now. We're going to get hit with a major hurricane. It'll be sometime, the eye will arrive on shore sometime tomorrow morning, most likely. And it is going to have major impacts, particularly along Florida's Big Bend region. So listen to your local officials. Take the appropriate precautions to protect you and your family. And once the storm passes, we will have help that will be on the way in the form of power restoration. We were able to go to Wildwood in Central Florida to meet with all the Duke Energy personnel that have been pre-staged there to help with Duke Energy and their power restoration efforts. We've got close to 30,000 people that are in the state of Florida staged for power restoration efforts. So that's going to be a priority to be able to get the power back on for folks. Obviously, search and rescue to the extent that's needed. Those guys are going to be ready to go. And Kevin and his team have a lot of staging of food, water, the things that people need when normal services are interrupted. So everybody hang in there. This is going to be something that will leave significant impacts, and particularly in this part of the state, you really got to go back to the late 1800s to find a storm of this magnitude that will enter where this one looks like it's going to enter tomorrow. So we don't really have a historical analog in anybody's memory. So it's likely to cause a lot of damage, and that's just the reality. So be prepared for that. Be prepared to lose power, and just know that there's a lot of folks that are going to be there to help you get back on your feet. Okay, we're going to hear from Kevin Guthrie.
Thank you, Governor. Good evening, everyone. As the governor has said, it's crunch time. We're down to the wire. Hurricane Idalia will be making landfall tomorrow morning. Some parts of Florida are obviously already feeling those impacts. We're seeing a lot of videos and still pictures coming out of Southwest Florida, specifically in Fort Myers Beach in those areas that were impacted a year ago. Again, want to let those people know that we're going to be there as soon as we can get to you guys tomorrow morning. We will have some of our southern staged assets in there to help you guys and evaluate some of that damage. If you haven't evacuated, you're north of Fort Myers, you're up into the central Gulf Coast, northern Big Bend area. If you have not evacuated, you need to do that right now. You need to drop what you're doing. You need to go to your room, pack up, pack your things, and get to safety. If you need power, you need to get to safety. You need to evacuate right now. We are going to experience historical flood surge up into the Big Bend area. This is nothing to be messing around with. We were in the vehicle traveling with the governor when I got the phone call that there was going to be potentially 10 to 15 feet of storm surge. Put that in perspective, that's 3 foot higher than what was predicted for Hurricane Ian in Fort Myers Beach. So please heed the warnings. If you're in that Big Bend area, your emergency managers are calling for an evacuation, please do it. I was on the phone again with Levy County, John McDonald. He is greatly concerned about Cedar Key. 12 to 13 feet of storm surge there. We've got to act, and we got to act now. We have launched our state assistance information line, or also referred to as cell line. That's number is 1-800-342-3557. Again, that's 1-800-342-3557. Residents can call the cell line and find out about how to prepare before, during, and after a hurricane, road closures, alternate routes, available open shelters, shelters designed for medically dependent individuals, and reentry information once it is safe to return. You can also, of course, get up-to-date information on our website at floridadisaster.org/updates. I know that we were with the CFO, and I would reiterate what he said earlier today. Take pictures. Take pictures of your home now. See what it looks like now before the storm is here, so that, again, when it happens, if you have damage, you then take pictures. You have before and after pictures. Taking pictures of the interior portion of your home as well, not just the exterior portion of your home. And then please do not be taken advantage of after the storm. Make sure that you are you don't do any cash transactions, you don't sign anything. If you've got any type of issues when it comes to insurance, you can always call the CFO's office at 1-877-MY-FL-CFO, and he will certainly help you out through all of that. So please heed warnings, do smart things. Please evacuate right now if you need to do so. And again, Governor, as always, thank you for your leadership on this.
Thank you, General.
Thank you, Governor, for your leadership and for your support of your Florida National Guard. Director Guthrie, thank you for your tremendous work and of your team, the great work you're doing to ready our state and to protect Florida citizens. The Florida National Guard is fully mobilized with over 5,500 soldiers and airmen deployed or deploying. We are ready to provide humanitarian assistance, search and rescue, route clearance, and security missions throughout the area of operations in partnership with our state and local agencies. Over the past 48 hours, the Florida National Guard has been positioning personnel and units in strategic locations near expected landfall areas to assist impacted counties as rapidly as possible. The Florida National Guard's response efforts are organized around 4 task forces. Task Force 53, our main effort, is operating in the western coastal counties with 1,600 guardsmen. Task Force 164 is prepared to support counties in the central and northeast Florida with over 1,200 guardsmen. Task Force 83 is prepared to provide aviation support for search and rescue operations and commodity distribution. And Task Force 50 is prepared to provide transportation, sustainment, and communication support with over 1,100 guardsmen as needed. In addition, we have guardsmen currently manning state logistic response centers and other warehouses with over 200 guardsmen throughout the state. We're supporting over 20 county emergency operations centers with liaison specialists, and we continue to work mission requirements prior to landfall, including setting up Tiger Dam containment systems around Manatee County Hospital. The Florida National Guard currently has on hand 2,400 vehicles available to include high mobility and high water vehicles, 14 rotary wing aircraft, with additional aviation assets coordinated with neighbor states through mutual aid agreements, and 23 small watercraft to support search and rescue operations and delivery of supplies in flooded areas. I shared Governor DeSantis' remarks, and I want to thank our neighboring Guard states for their assistance and willingness to provide additional assets during this critical time. And lastly, I'm proud of the quick response of your National Guard soldiers and airmen, and know they are grateful for the opportunity to serve the citizens of our great state. Thank you.
I am Colonel Brian Smith, Director of Law Enforcement for Florida Fish and Wildlife. And Governor, I want to thank you for your leadership and support during this emergency, as well as Director Guthrie, your support to FWC and making sure we have all the tools we need to get this job done. FWC has the officers and equipment and experience, as well as the training, to be effective in the immediate hours following a hurricane. We want to remind everyone, just as has been said before, please heed any warnings, and if you are in evacuation zones, please evacuate. FWC has staged 2 rapid response teams just outside the projected path of Idalia, with nearly 50 personnel, and emergency response equipment. We'll be bringing high-wheel vehicles and boats capable of negotiating this high water environment, and our officers are well versed with the necessary precautions in this post-storm environment. FWC will be there to help everyone. We're coming to help you along with our brothers and sisters and first responders. We're honored to be called upon to assist with this, and following our immediate response, we'll have the resources and personnel to assist in recovery efforts for as long as we're needed. And thank you again, Governor, for all your support and leadership.
Okay.
I'm Colonel Gary House with your Florida Highway Patrol. FHP has approximately 300 troopers statewide. It's on standby, ready to assist and respond as needed as the impacts of Hurricane Idalia are felt. Currently, we have approximately, again, 300 troopers on Alpha Bravo shifts. In other words, 12-hour shifts that are rotating with no days off in preparation for the response to the storm. Our troopers are maintaining high visibility along our interstate highways and all our evacuation routes, especially our interstate rest areas. We're coordinating with our local sheriff's offices, and we're assisting specifically in Taylor, Dixie, and Levy counties, and notifying residents in evacuation areas to evacuate and heed that warning. We're coordinating with our FDOT partners, monitoring our roadways and our bridges to make sure they're safe for travel. And as the governor mentioned, once speeds reach up to 40 miles an hour, we're going to shut those causeways and those bridges down. So now is the time, as Director Guthrie said, now is the time to heed those warnings and evacuate if you're in an evacuation area. We're going to continue to monitor. We advise you to also monitor your local emergency management officials and local sheriffs and follow their directions as they put out releases and directions for you to follow as the storm approaches and the impacts are felt. After the storm passes, I would encourage you not to go out and sightsee. Give first responders room to work, room to respond, and room to assist those in need. As you travel our highways, if you've become disabled, your vehicle becomes disabled, try to get out of the traffic ways. If you're unfortunately involved in a collision, try to clear the roadway and dial star FHP or 347. Star FHP or 347 if you need assistance. And if it's an immediate emergency, always dial 911. Governor DeSantis, thank you for your leadership, your support of your Florida troopers and law enforcement in general. Director Guthrie, also thank you for your support. Florida has great leadership, and we're proud to serve with you. Thank you.
Okay, so be ready for impact. It's going to happen. We'll be prepared for losing power, of course, and we've been stressing that over the past many days. This could have really significant storm surge on those coastal areas alongside the Big Bend. And storm surge of this magnitude is not something we've ever seen in this part of Florida in any of our lifetimes. So please take the appropriate precautions and just understand that this is something that absolutely can be life-threatening if you were in one of those areas that is in the coastal or low-lying areas when you're met with this type of storm surge. Okay, any questions?
quick question about to follow up on the insurance thing, because so many people are worried about it right now. What did you want to see that the legislature would not adopt in the current insurance reforms we passed back in May?
Look, we can talk about the policy stuff. I mean, I think right now we're focusing on the response, protecting people, and then getting what we need to go there. And this is about execution right now. We obviously can have different policy debates when the time's appropriate, but this is what we have to do to be able to save lives, be able to respond, be able to get people back on their feet.
Can you kind of talk about how many people are heeding those evacuation notices? How many people are under those evacuation notices right now?
So I'll let Kevin jump in if I say anything wrong, but I mean, I think on Cedar Key, the vast majority have done it.
Yes, sir.
And I think that I don't think it's 100%, but I think it was a lot. I think it was a big percentage, and probably a bigger percentage in some of those really sensitive areas than happened in Hurricane Ian with some of those areas that ended up being ground zero. Of course, I think there's been a lot more notice that this storm was likely to hit in this area compared to Ian, because I think we had some track shifts. So I understand how people process that. But we've been talking about the Big Bend now for a few days, and I think people got the message. And I think by and large, I think that they have heeded the advice. So I would say way more have heeded than have not heeded.
Obviously, the storm is going to be pretty significant for Leon County with all the big trees we have. We haven't had a big hurricane, if not ever. I guess, is the state contemplated a contingency plan if Leon County is not able to run properly for the long term? I mean, there's people saying we could lose power for weeks, months.
So we have spoken with the mayor and recommended that their utility accept the mutual aid, and I think he wants to accept it. I think he understands that could be useful. I think he understands that they want to get the power back on as quickly as possible. This utility here locally, has had some trouble on some of these situations with weaker storms in the past. I know in 2016. So we have the support here, and we want it to be used. So I think the city is going to welcome it, and that's why we have these people pre-staged, because we understand when you have a situation like this. I mean, hopefully nobody ends up in a life-threatening situation in Leon County at all. But even if some do, the vast majority of people are not going to be in that. The vast majority of people are not going to have their homes destroyed with this storm. But if they're without power for 2 weeks, I mean, that's not ideal. So we have the resources there. We want to bring those to bear. There will be some difficulty with all the trees, and there's going to be a lot of debris. We have our guys that are going to be willing to help with that as well. But we understand it's important to get this stuff going again. So there's a lot of resources available for both the county and the city to be able to help. And so we recommend that they take us up on that offer. All right, well, we will be here bright and early tomorrow, and we will be hunkering down here as the storm passes through this part of the state of Florida. Then once it passes, we're likely going to go down and be in the areas where you've had the most impacts and start the relief and recovery process as soon as this storm exits the state of Florida. Thanks.